We are live. Hello, world. Welcome to Deconflicted, where you're going to get a perspective on the three D's of life: discernment, decisions, and deconfliction. I'm your boy, Brian Boggs. I got my brother on the other side. Let him give himself.
Peace to the guys, man. My name is Antoine Jarvis. We definitely have another great show for you guys. This is definitely one of those thought-provoking conversations that me and my brother are going to have.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds beautiful. Let's get right into it then. So today's topic is don't be a victim to confirmation bias. Man, a lot of people gonna like confirmation bias. What you talking about, man? What you
Correct, correct. Matter of fact, I had to ask you before this. What,
yeah,
what,
I
what was
know.
it? Let's keep it funky. Go ahead
Got
and
it.
clarify what that is, brother.
So let me pull up the definition while we at it real
Please
quick.
do.
Like the uh confirmation bias, a phrase coined by English psychologist Peter Wasson, is the tendency of people to favor information that confirms or strengthens their beliefs or values and is difficult to dislodge once affirmed.
Hmm. Yeah. So if that is what I think it is, that's something I've definitely, like I told you, like I just was telling you before this, I've done myself. I already have a pre-existing belief on something, and I'll come across a meme or I'll come across this doctor said this, and then just immediately I'm like, man, that is exactly what I've been saying all this time before rushing to go do the research. Now it doesn't happen all the time, but if we're just being open and honest, which that's what we do here on Deconflict the podcast. There've been multiple times I have, been gullible enough to go off my. But the thing about it is, my pre-existing beliefs come from some research. You know what I'm saying? It comes from some research, but to reconfirm it, I didn't, you know, expand upon what the certain things now that I'm being exposed to make sure that they're parallel with my belief system. If that is kind of along the lines of, what you just read off as a definition.
Yeah, so like myself, I used to fall victim to it pretty regularly myself. I'm pretty good at noticing it and looking for the counterpoint now to get my to get whether or not something I believe is actually in the realm of truth. Give me all truth.
Mm.
Um, there, like I said, there was a time where I had an idea in my head on what I thought something was, and then I only looked up information that backed it up. That way, so I wasn't wrong.
Mm. Oh, so we're focusing on not being wrong and not the truth. If we operate from that standpoint, if you will.
And that's the whole cusp of confirmation bias is people want to inherently be right, so they look for things that confirm what they already believe.
Oh, damn. Okay. Okay. Yes. Definitely been a victim of that. Um, that's interesting because we were talking earlier about the whole Trump thing,
Right.
and obviously I'm gonna touch on it because it's current events, and like you were saying earlier, multiple jurisdictions indicted him. You know what I mean? It's not just one person saying you're doing something wrong. It's multiple different jurisdictions saying that hey, you're doing something wrong on different concepts, different laws that they feel you violated.
You're breaking
Um,
statutes.
you're breaking statutes. You're breaking statutes. I don't know if there's any victims in these. I haven't paid that close of attention. You know what I mean? But for sure, you're breaking statutes.
Absolutely.
Um, and like you were saying earlier, most people would just say, "Hey, man, it's a conspiracy. It's the elite trying to get them. They don't want him to run for president." You know what I mean? Versus, are we looking at what's really going on?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Are we looking at what's really going on? And oh man, that's tough because a lot of times it don't we don't be having bad intentions when we pick one side over the other. A lot of times it's just like, man, I don't want to see that side of that person. I don't want to believe that that person can be like that.
Exactly.
And that in a lot of ways motivates our decision making sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Think about when you heard some bad news about a friend of yours, something that a friend of yours did. Like, nah, man, he couldn't have did that. He couldn't have did that. You don't want to believe it because that ain't the person you knew him to be.
Or even just leaders in communities.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Leaders in communities, man. Like, oh man, whew, man, I just seen something about African Bambata, you know, touching on, one of his offspring or something to that effect. I just
yeah.
seen one where they were talking about this dude named Brother Polite is looking at going to jail. Hopefully, this is what social media is, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is some of the challenges of why people just make decisions based off what they see. Because social media is saying, hey, this dude's going to go to jail for X amount of years, right, for being a child predator, but the dude's still on the streets.
But see, but I want to stick with what you just said. People making their decisions and beliefs off of what they see. But the
What they see.
killer is it ain't what they see. It's really what they hearing. They ain't seen nothing.
Hey, they ain't see nothing. You're
Exactly.
right. You're right. You're right. It's
So it's
funny,
going on
man.
what they hear. You know, there's the old
Yeah.
adage: believe half of what you see and none of what you
And none
hear.
of what you hear. Yeah. That's comedy. Because you're right. Um, that is exactly the concept you just presented. This is why people, because we've convinced ourselves that if we see it on social media, that's enough.
It's real.
It's real. And I think somebody has said one time, well, if it's on the internet, it's got to be real. And I'm sitting here thinking like, man, dude, we've convinced ourselves that memes, what's the other social media, Twitter, IG, all these different social media platforms are now our news stations, and they're unbiased,
See, the idea
and
of
that's far
something
from
being
the truth.
unbiased, the idea of something being unbiased is a lie in itself, you know, and it's crazy, but that's what people think.
For sure, for sure, people are going to go online and say, "Hey, this is the truth," not even caring about what you can do to a person's credibility or what you can do, how you can harm a person's legacy, right? And again, that's what I said before. If it's a leader in the community, right, in somebody's community, and now there's rumors being spread about them, whether it's the honest to God truth or not. Now there's some type of now their legacy is tarnished just because a person decided to not do their own due diligence. But there's not. I can't say that there's a valid reason for you not to do your own due diligence when you have handheld computers.
Well, you know, people like the path of least resistance. A lot of people like their opinion given
Mm,
to them instead of forming it.
that says a lot about a person's character too.
Absolutely. I mean, but the thing is, if you look back at the history of the world, you know, and you look at mob mentality, you know, when you think about the the burning of women at the stake because they was witches, you know, the lynching of black folk, you know,
Hmm.
by the mob, and people took pictures and made postcards out of it. You know,
You're right. No, you're not wrong. I actually seen. I forget which book it was, but there was a book where there was actually the mob was bringing their kids out. You know what I mean? To actually watch a so-called black man be hung.
yes,
You know what I'm saying? Being hung out there, um, and the only reason I use so-called before I said black is because black is not an ethnicity. That's a whole other conversation,
right.
right? But I've seen it. Like people that mob mentality that you're speaking of, people will come out, even bring their damn kids to watch something go on based off of the words of one or maybe two individuals that they believe, not even considering the fact that we have a judicial system that should be utilized first so we can present none of that matters when you're hanging somebody. And that's back then, and that's the same thing today. People are still getting hung today, and not even in a physical sense where somebody's, getting a rope hung around them, but people's careers are being destroyed because of some things that people are saying without doing their own due diligence.
Hey,
So
that's
it's very
all right.
dangerous.
The allegation is always worse than the crime. A lot of
For
times,
sure.
you know, just all you got to do is say somebody did something, and whether they did it or not, you can tarnish that person for a
Mm.
very long time.
Emmett Till, perfect
Mhm.
example.
Perfect example.
Emmett Till, the lady ended up being in her 90s or something like that, and what was it, 80s or 90s or something like that, and then finally said that, felt bad and finally said, oh yeah, he didn't do that. He didn't do what we said he did.
Yeah.
But he's already dead. You know what I'm saying? Like those are the type of consequences of not making the time, not taking the time to do your own due diligence to figure out if what you're believing in is your own. But like you said, it's people like the path of least resistance, and I was that way at one point in time. I really cared for the shortcuts. You know what I mean? Because I wanted to spend my time doing other things. So I completely understand. We're all human. Um, but as I matured and focused on being a better version of a man, I realized things that come out of my mouth, I have to be held accountable for.
I'm with you there.
You know what I mean? And not even out of my mouth, out of my fingers now.
Absolutely.
You
Anything
know what I'm
that I
saying?
communicate, I got to be accountable for. You know, and that's the reason why, like for myself, if I communicate something and I was wrong or inaccurate, I immediately make a retort or make a apology or correction to what I said. Because it's not about me being right or wrong. But at the end of the day, what I want is just for the best, and the best normally comes out when you're trying to get to the most right. You know, and right is relative. You know, I
I was
understand.
about to say, yeah, it is pretty relative when you,
Yeah,
on the grand scheme of things.
right is relative, and I totally get that. And that's why I try to. That's why I said the most right. You know,
Right.
the right that serves the greater good. You know, because I could be in the right and rob a bank because my family, a family member has been kidnapped, and if I don't pay this ransom, they gonna kill him. So for me to get the money to pay the ransom, I gotta rob a bank. I feel right in doing that because I don't want my family member to die. But that don't make
Correct.
it right.
Correct. And they told me not to involve the police. So I didn't call the police because they told me they would kill him if you know what I mean? Like so
Exactly.
in your mind, you've convinced yourself that what you're doing is the right way to go.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing. You know, again with the confirmation bias. You know, so many people. You know, like on Trump, like his and like I'm not for or against Trump. You know, I agree with some of his policies. I disagree with some of his policies.
Correct.
Uh, with with the indictments in the multiple jurisdictions, and for his hardcore urban supporters that say, "Oh no, everybody's against them," they choose not to look at it holistically. Like, okay, you got you got different point of views that is saying that he has done something he wasn't supposed to do. And
Mm-hmm.
say we live in a country of laws, and if the rule of law matters, it's supposed to be applied equally, which we know doesn't happen really, but that's what
Correct.
we say. Then we must act accordingly. And then that's the thing that I really, really find challenging is when people say, nah, he ain't did it, he ain't did it. I'm like, look, come on, man. Like, look, I understand innocent till proven guilty. I dig the concept. Totally dig the concept. But you don't say he didn't do it. You just say they got to prove he did it.
That's really what's being said. And in its own way, taking the stance of, come on, man, like 4 different jurisdictions, taking that stance is a form of confirmation bias, because at the end of the day, they're right in a way, because he hasn't been convicted yet. You know what I'm saying? Let me not say yeah. I don't know which direction it's going to go, but he
Right.
hasn't been convicted. And like you said before, innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. It just sucks that I know people who didn't get that shot, um, and we're constantly seeing it damn near once a month. Somebody is being released from prison after 18, 20 years. A person of color is being released from prison after 18, 20 years because they found out the person didn't do it.
Right. Absolutely. And again, and that's why I say I'm not saying that he did it, but I'm also not saying that he didn't do it.
Correct. Correct. We have to look at it from both sides. So we can be as unbiased as possible. Because again, if you pick a side, it's going to plant a seed in your head for the next conversation you have about that.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. Because it's just like the people that are against him that say, yeah, he did it. They got confirmation by him too. Because they say, well, he got indicted by all these different people. He had to do something. Look, the likelihood is if he got indicted, chances are he probably did something he wasn't supposed to do. Chances are.
To some effect. Yeah, to some effect.
To some effect.
That's why he got indicted.
Exactly. But the one thing you always got to remember is on the federal side of things, they don't indict you until they pass that 90% threshold of
I mean, if we keeping it all the way funky, that's normally the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's normally the case. But we will see if that is the case with somebody with power, and is a billionaire.
And dirt.
That part. That part. Because now I'm thinking like, okay, cool. That's normally what they do to the average Joe. But now we're dealing with a political figure, ex-president. He got dirt on people. He's a multi-billionaire. He has power.
Right.
Is that same concept that we look at, in dealing with the federal government? Yeah, they got to have at least a 90% amount of evidence stacked up against you before they try to try you. That's normally how they do things. That's why, they have such a high success rate.
Absolutely.
But is this one of those situations where they jump the gun? We won't know until everything plays out.
Or is it a situation where they say, well, we got to do something, so we may lose.
We got pressure from these people over here.
Yeah.
Right? We got pressure from these people over here with power, so we got to pull the trigger.
And that's the thing that's interesting about all of it. But but back to the confirmation bias. I don't want to focus too much on Trump because
Right, right, right. Because it's going to shift the conversation.
you know what I'm saying. That was just an example that we wanted to utilize. Uh, but I know in my life I used to look for things that confirm what I already believe. Because the thing that's funny is there's always going to be people that agree with your point of view,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how radical it is. And if you're trying to get to the the cleanest truth, the cleanest narrative.
That's an interesting term right there.
Yeah. I just thought
The cleanest truth, the cleanest narrative. Damn. Okay, I got you. Yeah,
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
The one that's the most shiny,
Correct.
the most like right. You gotta look like now for me, like when I'm looking up stuff, like if I'm researching, some antioxidants or if I'm researching something I'm interested in, I look for what I'm specifically looking for, and then I reverse Google it. Then I go for the contrary to what I'm interested in to see
For
what
sure.
you know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to get as close to the real,
The cleanest truth as
exactly,
possible. Yes,
absolutely.
for sure.
You know
For
what I'm saying?
sure.
But it takes work, because as a human being, we're fallible. We
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 are.
we have flaws, and we naturally, just like electricity, want to take the path of least resistance because it's easier for us, and that's okay that we're human, and that's what happens. But when you're trying to be the better side of you, the better you got to be intentional and making sure you reveal the real.
For sure. And I know we said we're going in different directions because we don't want to just dwell on the Trump stuff, but even because of the topic, right? Because of the topic, we were still on track. The reason why we were still on track is because at the end of all of this, right, there were going to be people, even if they find out that he didn't do it, right? There's not enough evidence to hold him. He didn't do it. Whatever. There's going to be a ton of people who will already have him convicted in their mind just because he was indicted.
Facts.
So now, voting voting year comes along. I'm not voting for that guy, not because I did my own research to find out that stuff was smoke and mirrors, but I'm not going to vote for him just because he was indicted. He had to be a criminal. So it kind of goes along the conversation that we're talking about because they're going to form a biased opinion just off the fact that he's been indicted.
But
Because,
see,
like we said earlier,
I think he'll get more votes if he's a criminal. Let me tell you why.
potentially,
Think about it. The most famous people in history tend to be the outlaws. Those are the
hell
ones,
no. Bill Cosby's still in prison.
the outlaws, man. You know what I'm saying? The outlaws. Al Capone was a gangster. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
Bugsy Siegel. I mean, you know what I'm saying? All these different gangsters from American history are in the history books. I think about Christopher Columbus got a holiday. He was a criminal.
for sure,
You know what I'm saying?
for sure. But I don't think that. But I don't think that a person intentionally does that or does what they do to get put in the history books, which is why I don't believe not everybody's gonna bite on, well, he's a criminal, he got to be doing something right. Now, don't get me wrong, right? If you think about it, and the reason why I say that, let me say before I say don't get me wrong, the reason why I say that is because if you remember in this videos of this on social media where during the elections, Hillary Clinton tried to say, oh yeah, and I'm paraphrasing, to some effect he's not paying his taxes. And he was like, well, that's smart. He's just utilizing the law. And he told her, he was like, well, if that's the case, if you guys have a problem with it, well, then change the laws. But you're not going to, because your friends and your donors are are also they're also benefiting off of these laws. And most people are not going to say, okay, you know what? Let me find out what laws he's talking about, so that way I and my benefit and my business can benefit off of it. They're just going to be like, oh yeah, he's a criminal just because he's not paying taxes. Some are going to read between the lines, right? But then some are going to be like, nah, he's just a criminal because he's not paying taxes. So that's why I say I can't 100% agree that he's going to get more votes for being a criminal. Now, if he's indicted and he comes out he's not guilty, that's going to be a game changer for sure.
Look,
He's going to
man,
be a hero.
you just so you know, your phone is going real slow, and everything. Like I can't even see you now, but I'm gonna keep talking. And I get the perspective that you're providing, and I get your point. How you fell out. Well, from my perspective, with America being a country that was created by criminals, renegades, because we decided we didn't want to follow Great Britain's rule, taxation without representation. We giving up money and ain't getting nothing in return. So we're gonna break the rules of the people who technically are over us. That's what this whole country was about. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but what I'm saying is, to me, with Trump getting seen as the renegade now, that's just going to bolster his uh, the idolizing that happens in society, because he's going against the populist idea of right. So I mean, but back to the whole thing about the confirmation bias. A lot of people, they have a hard time seeing what's going on. You called me and you fell out. Just log back in. All right. All right. That was my other partner on the podcast. His signal fell out. He'll be back in shortly. But on the confirmation bias, we want to be right. Like you take a man that thinks he's good, he's going to call himself a good man, and he's going to think he's doing things the right way. But other people might see it differently. But he's only going to listen to the perspectives of people that agree with his concept of himself. Just like with women too. Most women think they're good women, but they don't have nobody. So are you really a good woman? I mean, who's verifying this? Nobody's seeing it as that. So, and you get the confirmation bias from other people who say, yeah, you're this, you're that, but it's not changing the outcome. And that's for men and women. We'll think we something, but the outcome isn't what we want. But we're gonna keep believing that we are what we think we are, because people are confirming what we think we are to ourselves.
That's a cold game because, and I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it goes for men and women because that goes to show that we're trying to get down to the cleanest truth as possible, right? That's an example of trying to get to the cleanest truth because in reality, yes, it does. There's times we don't keep it all the way funky with our friends. Allegedly, we call them friends, right?
Yeah.
But we're not keeping it all the way 100 with them to provide them with the game that they need to be the best version or a better version of themselves. You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to hurt feelings, if you will.
Hey.
You see what I'm saying? We're not trying to hurt feelings if you because it's different. It's different from guys. You know, guys are not going to be like, well, how do I look in this dress? You know what I'm saying? Whereas women are going to be like, how do I look in these pants and stuff like that with other women, and women are just going to gas them up and all that type of other stuff. Same thing with men. Men are going to tell them the softest truth that we can. Oh yeah, I like those pockets on you. You know what I'm saying? Like those pockets. I'm not going to tell you, the honest truth, but I'm gonna find something to compliment so that way I don't answer directly what you're asking me. And it's funny because we're brainwashed to believe that women only want um I can't say the cleanest truth. Women, their emotions have to be
They
kind
want
of
the
babied,
softest
if you
truth.
will.
They want the softest truth.
They want the softest truth possible, the softest truth possible. And because of that, it, because we believe that they're not strong enough to handle the truth, right? It makes it that much more challenging to be truthful to them. Whereas with us men, I mean, it's easy for us to be direct with each other,
Right.
especially if you ask me. Oh, I'm gonna keep it all the way funky.
And that's why women say, "Oh, your message is harsh. What you're saying is harsh. I don't like your tone." Because they want the softest truth. When you give them the real, the cleanest truth, they can't accept that.
Hey, that's facts. If we're keeping it all the way funky,
You know
yes,
what I'm saying?
that is exactly why they get emotional about how it's said. It's that concept of they are shooting the messenger and completely overlooking the message.
Totally missed the message.
Totally missed the message because the messenger did not present it correctly. Whereas with us men, and again, I'm not pissing on women. It's just the reality for for some of us men who deal with women the way we deal with them. These are things that we encounter. Um, and for men, again, it's totally different. We can be more direct. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
we
say
can
that
say again.
I got to go with half. I
We
think
can
that's
say we can say half. We can say the reason why I say with more men because there's more open debates between men than there are between men and women. And the
but
reason why I say that is because a lot of times, I mean, we're all stuck in our ways that I'm saying for the most part. Well, a lot of us are stuck in our ways for the most part, but men I see, especially when it comes to social media, men tend to be more, well, check this out. Well, you ain't even see this right here. I just seen somebody posted this right here, and this is why I'm telling you this person is guilty. Or you know what I'm saying? It's more, it's less, it's not so much emotion as much as it is. I want to be right, so here's some evidence that I looked up. It may not be unbiased research, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it
I,
could be.
hey,
I mean,
I
it
disagree
could
with
be
you. Hey,
right.
I
It
got it.
could be unbiased, but
Men get
what I'm
just
saying is,
men get just
what
as
I'm
emotional as women.
say again.
Men get just as emotional as women.
It, it, and everybody gets emotional, but the point I'm trying to make is not so much that we don't get emotional, but we feel the emotion first, but then we try to filter it with the logic. Well,
You
this is
should.
why I'm right.
You should.
You understand what I'm saying?
But that's why we fight. That's why we fight. That's why we have violent outcomes with each other.
That's
That's why we
exactly
think
why.
the guy disrespected us. And now I got to do something because we didn't like what was said. Instead of
It's
taking it
crazy.
with the grain of salt that it should be taken with.
Instead of taking it with a grain of salt, and I think that's a challenge for a lot of us,
Yeah.
especially if you grew up in very extreme conditions, if you will. And when I say extreme, it's you're not allowed to cry. Um, you better suck it up. Why you dressing like that? Why you talk like that? Why you walk like that? Cut that out. That's not what men do. You know what I mean? I was watching I was checking something out. I forget what it was, but I remember the brother was saying,
Just so you know, you
um,
froze.
I froze, but can you still hear me?
I hear you. I hear you good.
Okay, as long as the message still comes across.
I was giving you a heads up.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, but as long as everybody knows the message is coming across, we still good. But I do appreciate that for sure because I'm moving around in the damn camera, you moving around, and the signal has the audacity to hate on me like that. But I mean, so so back to what I was saying. The brother was talking about how he dressed, right? And he started wearing. He came out and he said he started to wear those quote unquote hoochie daddy shorts. And the girl was like, "Huh? Like you a gangster, bro? Like what is you doing wearing hoochie daddy shorts? You know what I'm saying?" I don't recall what they actually look like. I heard about them, but how he described them was they were above the knee, right? These shorts are because typically we wear our shorts to the knee or past the knee. These shorts were above the knee, and so he was just like, I'm at such a safe space that I can wear whatever I want to wear and not care about what somebody thinks about my sexuality. That's what type of masculine I am. And then for me, it was like that's perspective.
Facts.
You know what I mean? That's a level of growth right there that um, I can get behind. And I have a friend of mine who I extremely respect, and we were having a conversation about a week ago about imagery. And the reason why I'm bringing this up to go back into what we talk, what the topic is because all this stuff that we're seeing, somebody's telling us, right? Somebody's telling us how a man is supposed to do things. Matter of fact, there's even women telling men on how a man is supposed to do X, Y, Z, right? And because somebody's constantly telling us how we're supposed to do things, when are we ever thinking for ourselves? When are we ever forming our own hypothesis about the information that I just gathered and making my own decision based off of my own perspective and my version of how I want this to go? Or do we ever do that? What's your thoughts on that? If you can still hear me.
I hear you. I hear you great. But this is my perspective on that. Is in a society there are norms and abnorms. You know, the abnormal and the normal. And a lot of time, society is about agreement and cooperation.
Hmm.
So people are telling you what they see as agreement and cooperation in the society that they're accustomed to. Because it's crazy because it's all one supposedly civilized society, but you got pockets of different levels of civility,
Hmm.
and that's why some actions and behaviors are totally okay in one area and totally out of the norm in another. So, and when you operate in a society, you give up a little bit of the individual for the whole of the society.
Mm. If the focus is the betterment of the whole of society and not my own
Absolutely, that's the whole
individual.
purpose of society is for the betterment of all.
Right, correct. Which is challenging if self-preservation is a thing.
Oh, self-preservation is definitely a thing.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's kind of like and conflict. Because yes, the right thing to do is to look out for the betterment of society. But then, well, hold up. I'm also trying to look out for the betterment of Antoine, and that may, go against what society says is best for Antoine, or what I believe society wants. Antoine believe is what's best for him. Wouldn't that kind of create that type of conflict, if you will?
It's not necessarily conflict. See, what the way I see it, I feel every human being is like a celestial body. We move towards the sun and we move away from the sun. The sun is society. Sometimes we get close and we get warmth, the warmth of all the other people in society, and that's what we're doing. But then there's also a period of time where we got to get away. Well, we got to get closer, further away, where we focus on us as well. That way, so when we come back to society, we bring a better version of ourselves. So, you see what I'm saying?
I like what you did there. I like the picture you just painted right there. That's why I laughed, because I'm like, man, th- that's that's my that's my personality, if you will. You know what I mean? You just described my personality to a T,
Absolutely.
and I've never heard it described like that, because most of the time I'm like, I'm in my own shell doing my own thing, and there's times I like to peek out of my shell and say, okay, well, I'm still alive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What, have y'all heard about this? And then everybody's like, whoa, shit, where you been?
Yeah.
Where you been? You know what I mean? And but I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
You know
And
what
the
I'm
thing
saying?
that's funny
Because
is every human's like that. Just some people
to
have
some
longer
level, for
winters
sure,
and some
for
people have longer
sure.
summers. Summers when you're closer to the sun, winters when you're further away from the sun.
Hmm. I could definitely see that. And it's funny you brought up the conversation of, you know, the winters and the summers, because back to what you were saying earlier about, men and women, and the idea of, if you're such a good person, right, why are you still single? Why is it a challenge to find somebody that you respect and admire, that you find attractive, to also find you attractive? Why is it, why is the why is there why is that being a challenge, right? And we're not saying that you're not we're not saying that you're not getting access to men, right? Or, dudes are not getting access to women. But ultimately, why is there a challenge? And I'm gonna pose a question after this statement, right? Because I definitely want your thoughts on this. But why are people having a challenge having relationships and having long-term relationships, right? If they're good people, if if they're good people, why is there challenges, right? My question I want to pose to you is, do you feel that most men go through those same? Let me give you a backdrop real quick, and to give you a deeper understanding of where my mind's going with this. I personally believe that women control access to intercourse, and men control access to relationships. Typically in our society, a man is asking a woman to marry him, not the other way around. Um, and if that's the case, right, do you believe men are looked at the same exact way for being single as, because again, we're talking about, biased perspectives. Are men looked at the exact same way in society for being single as women are as they grow older and are single? And why?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that question. I want to go back on a quick in response to something you said about the attraction. And I don't think that women have an attraction issue. They can attract a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
What they have normally is a keeping issue, the ability to to have a man want to stay there. That's the challenge for him, in my opinion. You know,
Okay.
uh,
Do men have that same? That men have that same challenge as well, or do you think that that's just woman's challenge?
men and women have the challenge, but it's definitely a bigger problem for women based upon your own concept that men control the access to relationships. So if a man controls the access to relationships, when he wants to get out of one, he get out of one. When he wants to get in one, he get in one. And the woman has to accept the whims. Even though most marriages are broken up by a woman than a man, which is actually the inverse of the men control access to relationships because once the relationship goes into the marriage realm, woman controls the continuation of that union traditionally.
So are you saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying there's more women out here breaking up homes after they get married than there are men breaking up those
Absolutely.
homes after they get married?
More is statistically true, where more women initiate divorce than men. Because the thing that's funny about
Okay.
men is once a man decides to get married, we'll deal and humble ourselves and deal with some stuff for the sake of a family unit because
I'm
we
listening.
vision that this is our family and we're gonna fight to protect and provide for it. That's our mandate as men, as a husband and as a father. The two things that you always hear is provide and protect, provide and protect.
Right.
So since we encompass and live that ethos, that's the reason why women tend to be the ones that end marriages.
And break up families.
Exactly. So so so
Okay.
that's that's my perspective there. On the perspective, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Um, is it the same across the board? You kind of elaborate on it to explain why it's not the same um, for men and women in regards to
Oh, how
in
they look?
regards to
How they look in being single? How men are looking? How women are looking?
correct, yeah, and you kind of touched on that in
Yeah,
regards
yeah,
to
yes.
how are men and women looked at the same,
And I
but
don't
if you're
think they're
trying to
looked at
say
the same.
I don't.
Um,
I don't either. I don't either. That's why I asked for your thoughts on it because I was going to tell you my damn self. I don't believe it's looked at the same, and for many different reasons. Um, and I and to piggyback off what you were saying about the divorce rate, a lot more men would rather stay in those relationships, even if those relationships sucked.
yeah,
A lot more men would rather stay in those relationships to keep their family together than today's women. So I can kind of see, uh, and there's plenty of reasons. Men are not really incentivized for divorce, whereas a woman can get Section 8, can get housing, can get alimony, can
and
get
you have the man's worth.
right. You can get if we keep it all the way funky. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep it all the way funky. Yes. Even if he ain't worth nothing. You know
They're
what I mean? Even if he
incentivized.
ain't worth nothing. She's
Yeah,
taking the 2002 Honda Accord with 227,000 miles on it. That's hers. She's taking that. So if we're keeping it all the way funky,
she's taking the
yeah.
kids. She got kids.
She's taking the kids a lot of times,
Even though she's the
right?
one that's unhappy, but she's taking the kids. Kids ain't unhappy.
The kids are not unhappy, but now they are because that person decided to. And playing devil's advocate, there's many different reasons on why she chose to. It could be infidelity. It could be
Right. I mean,
lying. It could
but the
be
reason doesn't matter.
she's not happy. The reason doesn't matter,
The
right?
reason
I don't want
doesn't
people to
matter.
focus on the reason. Just the idea of the imagery that comes behind it, and now people are creating their own bias on even relationships now. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Even relationships.
absolutely.
You see the war. You see the war right now, and we'll touch on this, another time. But I'm just gonna say this real quick. But you see the war between men and women on social media right now, in all different types of groups. You know what I mean? Facebook groups, IG freaking podcasts. You know, people doing IG podcast. You see the war between men and women, and it has a lot to do with um, it has a lot to do with the imagery of relationships and the imagery
Absolutely.
of men towards women and women towards men.
Everybody wants to be
You
right.
know what I mean? Every
Everybody wants to be right.
and that I think that's a challenge. I know for me it is because here's the thing. Even when I'm even if I even if I am ultimately right, right? How do we get down to the cleanest truth that both of us can understand? And how do we utilize me being right to better our relationship or better our understanding of what we're dealing with?
That's the key. And that's the question that people don't ask.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you're in the wrong mindset, right, you're going to be like, oh, you just want to be right. Well, you're going to miss the idea of I'm right because of X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
You
And the
know
only
what I'm
reason why,
saying?
and the only reason why I'm right is because the perspective you're providing and the outcome that it gives is inefficient. It's wrong. You know, I'm saying inefficient. You know, when I was walking today, I came up with a formula in my head because I'm very outcome based, and then I was thinking about confirmation bias, and I was like, to me, in life, it's actions plus effort plus mindset plus the product of environment times system equals outcome.
For sure.
You know,
For sure. For sure. Whether the outcome is good or bad,
whether the outcome is
yeah,
good or
I
bad,
was I would say that's the equation.
absolutely. And I think that's the equation for a person's life. And the equation, it's not about hardcore numbers. It's an optimization model. Where as the numbers change, the outcome gets either greater or smaller.
Correct.
And a lot of people, when they focus on the right and wrong, when you're right, you're gonna give effort. When you're wrong, you don't want to give effort because you feel like you should have been right. So so that the effort
That's
dies
facts.
down. And that's why the outcomes get worse. They get less than. And you see that in marriages. Like when someone stops putting forth effort, that's when the outcome starts to equal divorce instead of continuity of the relationship.
I want to even say, let's go deeper than that. Uh, Not even when they stop putting in effort, but when they stop putting in a effort that the other person can recognize.
That's the action.
That's the action like a mug. Can this person recognize? Can this person still recognize the effort that I'm putting in?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or am I just saying, well, I'm putting in effort, right,
See,
based
the effort
off
is
of
the
what
enthusiasm.
I want,
The action is the actually what you do so the other person sees it.
so the other person can see it. So that person can see, and again, so that can be communicated to them. The reason why I'm putting in this effort is because this is something that you're interested in, or this is something that is of importance to you, which then involves communication, which then involves ultimately doing your own due diligence on why you feel the way you feel, or why you look at things the way you look at them. Um, and I'm gonna drop this real quick, and not really go too much in depth into it, but I think it's important. I think therapy for some is very very important.
Yes.
I think therapy for some is very very, especially people who aren't really good at critical thinking. if you're not really good at critical thinking, I think therapy is good to actually try to provide you with some exercises so that way you can see your flaws and see the challenges and see the reasons why you're having the challenges that you're having in life, and provide you with some type of exercises. It's not going to be the end all be all, right? But it can provide you with some type of exercises that allow you to work out the kinks of what you're weak at.
I agree.
But again,
And I
you
think
know,
in therapy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Finish what you're saying, brother.
I said I think therapy is essential, but I think perpetual therapy is negative. Uh,
For sure. I think you
I,
gotta you
I
gotta you
know
gotta have a
people
game plan.
that have been seeing a therapist, for 5, 10 years.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
that's the only person they can talk to about their shit.
For sure. No, for sure.
But
For
it
sure.
becomes a crutch because you never learn how to communicate to the people you supposedly care about or the people who you're having the problems with.
Correct. 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 And I can only speak for myself. Like I went to therapy for months, not even years. And just got what I needed to get to understand. Obviously everybody's different, so the approach has to be different. You know what I'm saying? And not only does the approach have to be different, the communication has to be that much more enhanced.
I agree.
Because now, just a simple concept of me saying something, but in my head, a whole different movie is playing, but you don't know the movie that's playing in my head. So when it
Right.
comes out of my mouth, I'm expecting you to already know what I'm talking about, and it's going over your head. Argument.
Yep.
Argument. Just off of the fact that I didn't communicate efficiently, right? I'm not even
Right.
gonna say I didn't communicate. I communicated wrong. I didn't communicate efficiently that provided you with enough information to know where I'm coming from, so you can actually be able to listen to what's being said and not overlook what is being said, and you're able to take the information and be able to have a conversation about that, so we can move forward in a direction that's beneficial to all of us.
And you know what? And I'm glad you brought up communication. So this is a conversation I have with a lot of people. I ask them. I say, "What's the purpose of communication?" And I get different answers. And the one constant I say I hear is that a lot of people think communication is to be heard, to explain yourself, uh, so that a person understands you. And then I always counter like that's not what communication is for. The purpose of communication is to transmit what's in your head to another person so they know what you're thinking. That's the purpose of communication.
Mm.
And most people don't communicate what they're really thinking. They communicate around what they're thinking tangentially or perpendicular to it or parallel to it
Hmm.
instead of what they really think. And then when there's a misunderstanding, they lose it. Argument.
Straight up. Because it's easy to be like, man, this motherfucker's not. They're just not listening.
Yeah.
They're just not listening. They keep doing over and over again. They're just not listening, right? And the best way I've seen, as far as the outcome is concerned, the best way I've seen as far as figuring out the most efficient outcome is, um, for one, our perspective of the person that we're talking to. For two, how important it is for me to be right. And then for three, how important is it for me to give them all the information that I have in my head so they can really understand where I'm coming from, so that way we can move forward in a direction that's beneficial for all of us? Or am I just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to verbally throw up. If they don't get it, then F them, I'm out of here.
Right. Which is the way most people do
Well, because it's easy.
it.
Hey, straight up and down. It's easy because
It's
you're not
easier.
getting me. It's
They
your
rather,
fault.
they rather have
You're
this
you're the bad
confluence
person.
of emotions that come out as words, and they expect you to be able to put that puzzle together.
Correct. So if I leave the relationship, it's your fault, not mine, because you didn't get me. You weren't listening. You know what I'm saying? And I think that right there, that can pose a lot of challenges because again, if you leave in those type of circumstances, you're going to take that way of thinking with you to the next environment that you put yourself into, and you're going to have a biased opinion on how you should do things and how this person is based off what you're seeing versus doing your own due diligence to be able to understand, well, shoot, this is similar to what I went through before. Let me find out the most sufficient way to handle this.
Until you
But that
check your
requires work.
absolutely, and until you check your confirmation bias, until you go to the cleanest truth, and sometimes the cleanest truth is the harshest truth.
It is. It
You're
is.
you're gonna stay in the same space that you've been. And the thing that's beautiful about life is, hey, whatever that you want to live in, you can.
For sure. It's your choice.
It's your choice. Like
It's your
the choice
choice.
is yours. But don't say that you've done this, this, and this, and I'm trying to help you this, and this, when but you're not.
That's facts. And unfortunately, a lot of people accumulate a jealous mentality because, you know, this realm that they're creating, this world that they're creating, they can't see it from a perspective of or from a mindset of abundance.
That's serious right there.
You know what I'm saying? So you
Not to
you
mention
planted
the
a
world today, they
seed.
don't know how habitable it is.
You plant a seed in your own mind because, like you said earlier, you are in control of this. This person is planting a seed in their mind of jealousy and hatred of what somebody else is doing or what somebody else got because they can't see that they can't create or they haven't chose to put in the work to create the abundance mindset to overlook how they feel at that moment. You know what I'm saying? Um, but man, great build, brother. Great build,
Absolutely,
man.
as always.
Anything else you wanted to touch on before you get out of here?
Hey, now I feel pretty solid. I think we delivered a pretty good message, a pretty good perspective to that bully confirmation bias. Watch out for
For
him.
sure, for sure. I understand that it's a real thing.
It's a real
You know what I'm
thing.
saying? It's a real thing.
Don't
It's a
let
real
it bully
thing.
you.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So I'm gonna hang out. I'm gonna hang out after we end this live. But everybody that's listening, man, I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a great show coming up. You know, on our next episode that's going to kind of piggyback off of some of the concepts we presented now. But you guys enjoy the rest of your night, man. Peace to the gods.
Hey, peace, love, and hair grease.